Financial wellness. Reach out to them for advice at 855-DON-GINO. And now back to your hosts, Don Getling and Gino Fronti.
And I think that's kind of what opened up the topic for what we're going to talk about today is, we went through this economic collapse. We're coming out the other side of it with lackluster performance. Let's be honest. It's not a very robust recovery, yet it is a recovery. So we'll talk a little bit about what drove that recovery, where we're at today, and, do you see another fall in the future?
I don't know about you guys, but I dropped my crystal ball on my way out of law school. So,
so you learned right then.
Because people ask me all the time, what do you think? Well, I dropped my crystal ball on my way out of law school. What do I see? It's hard to say. From what I see from behind my desk, as you and I have discussed countless times, I think that for the age group between 50 and older, this is a really rough recovery, almost a jobless recovery, because a lot of, at least what we see in Southern California, or in California in general, is technology-based. And they're not being tapped for their historical, institutional knowledge of what they know and understand. And so that age group is in a really tough spot when it comes to this recovery. And that certainly concerns me. I mean, we see that in the entertainment industry, where people who have been in the industry for decades in animation and sound and film, they're not getting their contracts renewed because they're too expensive. And so someone who's less expensive, less experienced, someone who's offshore is getting their jobs. So, we have to kind of look at what's driving this. I think that there is probably a better recovery among the younger generation who are more adept at the technology.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, that's just the way it is right now. I mean, you don't want to, pinpoint it, but yeah, it is. We've also seen, okay, on that note, you're talking about so many over 50 that can't, or it's more difficult to re-enter the job market or losing their jobs. We want to clarify, we bring this up a lot of times because we talk about a jobless recovery, is that, well, wait a minute, Lou, there isn't the unemployment number coming down? We're above 10%, now we're in the mid-5s. How can that be if it's a jobless recovery?
Well, that's what George Orwell wrote in 1984 about.
I love that book.
What's that?
I love that book. It was one of the books we had to read in, I think it was junior high. It was great.
Oddly enough, it's no longer on the required reading list in California. That's a scary thought.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
But, statistics, it's just government statistics. Yeah. And so those people have fallen off of the government statistics.
Right.
So if the raw numbers decline, then the percent of unemployment goes down.
Correct.
That's the reality.
We have our lowest participation level ever in U.S. history right now, with the amount of people that are able, willing to work, getting jobs right now. So it's very difficult.
Yeah, and I always say that I'm an optimist, and I think that some people are more entrepreneurial now because they were forced into a situation like that. In fact, technology, right? Reality is, in a traditional market, my wife would have been a horrible business person. She's just not she doesn't interact and network in the way that we would. But because she's younger, she actually interacts fairly well on Facebook, and she's been able to build a business.
And we all see her cakes.
Yeah. But that's a great example of, my mom would have never built a business that way, but my wife is building a business that way, and it's thanks to technology.
And I had this discussion. I attended a conference where there was a economist from UCLA, and we were talking about this jobless recovery. And I made the point that coming out of World War II, we were the only economy. Yeah. Okay, so I'm a student of economic history. I always go back to that. And the rest of the world, we had already destroyed.
Yeah.
Right? They had no manufacturing. They had no industry. And we were it. So for a good 20 years, coming out of World War II, we were the engine of the world economy until we began to place manufacturing in those countries. Why? Because our economic policy said that in order for those countries to rebuild and for them to become good consumers of our products, they had to have their own ability to manufacture. And then our Congress gave our industry incentives to put business offshore, and that if you do business offshore, you'll. And so what's happened now, here we are, the unintended consequences is that those industries that powered this economy for those 20 or so years after World War II are all offshore. And what do we have left in our economy? It's a service economy. And you can only service so much.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of a reality of where we are today. And yet I don't think that our government statistics and everything else has really readjusted for the reality of what we have today.
The one thing I will mix in, because I also look at that from a financial standpoint, I always look at financial markets and how they react to the global economy. And Don and I talk about it all the time on the National Real Estate Cafe, is that when you look at how easy it is for international trade of bonds and the international debt, you're talking about why interest rates are low, why they're globally low. It's no longer because of what's happening here in the United States. It's
Correct.
because of what's happening in the world.
Right.
You know, I can't tell you how many times I said rates are going to go higher, rates are going to go higher, rates are going to go higher. Something goes wrong in Greece, and all of a sudden rates don't go higher.
Right.
So we're affected definitely in a more global economy than ever, and that means the rules of how economies performed in the past are going to change.
You know, growing up back east, we used to say that when a butterfly flaps its wings off the coast of Africa, a hurricane forms off the east coast of the United States. I think it's the same thing today, is that, you know, something happens in some far-off land, and it has a direct and adverse and material adverse impact upon our financial markets and everything that goes along with it. You know, look at the price of gas and fuel oil and everything else.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. So, if you just tuned in, you're here with the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show every Saturday at 9 a.m. on AM 1220 KHTS, and we're here with Mr. Lou Esbin with Esbin Law, a good friend of ours, a financial attorney, one of the few certified bankruptcy specialists in all of California out of like hundreds of thousands of attorneys. So, what we're going to do this next, don't go away, because this last segment we're going to talk about what's going to build up that bankruptcy market potentially, because there's a new wave potentially coming. And we're going to talk about this really touchy subject right now with one of the largest amount of consumer debt there is, and that's student debt. I bet you didn't know that, or you've been hearing about it. You're going to hear more about it because it is all changed. And then, of course, we're going to talk about some great changes coming up in Newhall. That's right, because this is your local radio show giving you all the information you need to know. So don't go away. Tune in, and we'll be right back in about 3 minutes.